Welcome back to another Family History Friday video with the Butler Area Public Library. In this installment, we are going to talk about the Russell Key Index, which is also sometimes known as the LMNRT Index. It's one of the most common record indexing systems used in courthouses around Western Pennsylvania, and often it can seem really scary because it has a big grid of numbers in the front of it. But the Russell Key Index is actually really easy to use once you get the hang of understanding how it works. And it's going to be the key, pun intended, to unlocking all kinds of courthouse research for you. So in this video, we are going to show you how to use the index and then how to browse through records and give you the confidence to tackle the Russell Index and courthouse research.
All right, let's learn to unlock courthouse records with the Russell Key Index. So the Russell Key Index, if you've ever run into it, either in physical books or on microfilm or on digitized records that are available through major genealogy sites like Ancestry and Family Search, you've seen these charts and you may have felt a little overwhelmed and uncertain of where you're supposed to proceed from there. But today with this video, we're here to take that fear away because this chart is your key to unlocking all kinds of research opportunities. So the Russell Index is also called the LMNRT Index, and you'll usually see this little logo at the bottom of the page here with those letters in a key. And that is because the Russell system organizes names together based on key letters. And key letters are the common consonant sounds made by pronouncing the letters L, M, N, R, and T. So in our indexes, names are grouped by key letters, and then they'll be grouped by the first letter of a given name, which actually is really going to be helpful if you have a name that is ever subject to spelling problems or spelling variations. So Smith with an I, Smith with a Y, Smith with an E on the end, those names will all be together in the very same section. You don't have to jump around through the alphabet. Same with a name like Bailey that has a lot of common spelling variations. Kaufman, doesn't matter if it has two F's and one N, one F and two N's, those will all be grouped together. And same with the name Baldoff, which is fairly common here in the Butler area if you're doing research. It doesn't matter if it's just an A, an AU, if it's an O at the end or an A, all of those names share the same key letters, so they'll be grouped together. And it's going to make your research process a lot easier because you don't have to try and think of every spelling variation to jump around to, because most of them will be grouped together. And the Russell Index is primarily used throughout courthouses. So you may find it used in the Recorder of Wills, the Recorder of Deeds, the Clerk of Courts, or the Prothonotari's office. Every department in every county may not use it, but odds are you'll run into it in at least one of those departments. And for us in Western Pennsylvania, this index is so common. It's partly because the Russell company that developed this index for quite a while was based in Pittsburgh. So you can tell that they were locally based and able to pitch this as an opportunity to courthouses. So you can see here by looking at this list and looking at the map that pretty much all of Western Pennsylvania has at least one department in their courthouse, if not all of them, that are organizing their records using the Russell system. Using the Russell Index is a three-step process. First, you find the index book appropriate for your surname. Then you identify the key letter in your surname. And then using the chart in the front of your book, you use that key letter to find the appropriate section. And when you thumb to that section in the book, you then get any citation information for the person you're researching. So step one, finding your book. So the Russell Index groups all surnames together into index books by the first letter of the surname. So if your last name begins with an A, it's in the A book. The last name Baker starts with a B. It's in the B book. Miller, M. Macintosh, there's usually an MC book to separate the M's and the mix. Donaldson would be in D. So that first step is really easy. You just pull the appropriate volume for the first letter of the last name that you're researching. If you're in an actual courthouse, you'll see big, huge books like this on rolling racks, and you would simply just check the spine and pull the appropriate book. If you're online, if you're on Ancestry, you would want to look for the titles. So for example, for these will records from Butler County, we see a list indexed to wills A through B, C through E. Those letters are the first letters of the surname. So the last name Baker starts with B. It would be in the A to B book. So that's what those letters mean in those record titles. Just remember that the records that you're looking at when you're using Ancestry or any similar site, these are digital copies of microfilm or original books. So you need to think about them like you're looking at a book. They're not just individual images out of context. Similarly, if you are using the Family Search catalog, you'll see a list of book titles, and you just want to pull the appropriate index. These are deed records, and again, they are grouped by surname. So index volume A through B are for those A names like Andrews and Anderson, and the B names like Baker and Brown. Step 2, let's find our key letter. So let's remember that the key letters are the consonants L, M, N, R, and T in a surname. And that is ignoring the first letter of the name, because remember in the previous step, we pulled the book for all names that start with the same first letter. So the key letter is made up of everything else in the surname other than your first letter. And you want to identify your key letters reading left to right across the name. So let's look at some examples. The surname Logan. Remember, we're ignoring the first letter of the name, so the key letter is N. For the name DeWitt, key letter T. The name Johnson, N. The name Becker, key letter R. And in some larger communities, you might see the grid use pairings of key letters simply to make the sections a little more manageable when you're looking for citations. In that instance, you ignore duplicates of the same letter. So here's some more examples. The surname Graham. If it was a chart that was only using single key letters, for Graham, the key letter would just be R. But if we're looking at a larger community like Allegheny County, where it might be broken down with 2 key letters, for Graham, it would be RM. For the name Terwilliger, RL. For Johnston, NT. Wallace, the only letters in Wallace that count for key letters are the double L, but because we ignore duplicates, Wallace is just in section L by itself. And Wilson, LN. And I hope having the key letters highlighted in the names here helps you understand how you just skim across and look for those letters. And what if there's no key letter in a name, if it's something like McAfee, Jacobs, Agus, or Shaw? Those names all get grouped together in a miscellaneous category, so you'll always see a section for miscellaneous. So once we know what our key letter is for our name, we use it to identify the section. So that's when we refer to that chart in the front of the book that sometimes seems so daunting. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the box where the rows and columns for the key letter we've identified in our surname and the first letter of the given name of the person we're researching intersect. So let's look at some examples. If I am researching someone named Anthony Becker, we pull index book B because the last name starts with B. The key letter for the surname Becker is the letter R. And Anthony's first name starts with A. So we look across the row for given name initial A for Anthony, and down the column R for the key letter R, and those intersect at the number 14. So our section number is 14. If we were researching a George Wallace, we'd pull index book W for Wallace. The key letter for the name Wallace is L. George's first name starts with a G. And those rows and columns intersect at section 71. For Sam Jacobs, we'd pull index book J. Jacobs does not have a key letter, so we're looking at the miscellaneous column all the way on the end. Sam's first name starts with S, and those intersect at box for section 156. And even in some of these indexes where they might break it down into extra sections using 2 key letters, it works exactly the same. So for Michael Terwilliger, we'd be looking at book T. The key letters for the Terwilliger name are RL. And so we can see sort of in the center, we can see where all of the different R variations are. And Michael's first name starts with M. So the intersection of key letters RL and given name M is section 1141. And one last example, if we were looking for Brandon Miller, we're in index book M for Miller. The key letters for that surname are LR. Brandon's first name starts with a B, and so we would look in section 210 for any records having to do with Brandon Miller. And those section numbers that grid refers to are the page numbers in the top of the index book. So in the top corner, you will see numbers written, and those are your section numbers. And there's usually 2 numbers stacked on top of one another. The top number is your section number, so the number we found in that grid at the front of the book. And if there's a little lower number below it, that's just there to help you if there are multiple pages in the section. So we might have section 14 and it's 14.1, 14.2, 14.3. We'll look at an example of that in a second. So if I was wanting to search Butler County wills and estates for a person named Catherine Cooper, I would start by picking the appropriate index book for the last name Cooper, which would be book C, right here, the one that's C through E. And when Ancestry loads up the images, which are a scanned reel of microfilm, we can see right here in this thumbnail that this is, let me put the film strip out of the way, the book cover for the index book at the Register of Wills. The C lets me know that I am looking at the book for C surnames. And if I turn the page, right inside the front cover, we see that big Russell Key index chart. For the person I'm looking for is Catherine Cooper. For the name Cooper, the key index key letter is R. So let's zoom in. We can see here on the side, we have the row for R. And then Catherine's first name starts with a C. So we are just looking for the intersection between this C right here for Catherine and key letter R for Cooper. And that box has 340 in it. That means any entry there might be for Catherine Cooper is in section 340. Now I can certainly use my right and left arrows in Ancestry to go one page at a time through the book. We can see that the very first page of the book is section 110, and then 110, page 2. But that might take me a long time, and I certainly wouldn't turn every page individually in a physical book. I would flip a chunk at a time until I find the page number that I'm looking for. Same philosophy when I'm going through digital images on Ancestry. So in the film strip here at the bottom, which you can open by hitting the little icon that looks like a film negative, I can jump quite a few at a time skimming through this way. So I might flip a little bit and click on one of these thumbnails and just see where I am. So now I'm at section 240. I'm getting closer. Let's see here. Let's try this one. Sure enough, there's section 340, which is the number we found in our chart. And if I start looking at this page, I see a couple Coopers. And right here in the center is an entry for Catherine Cooper. And I can see a bunch of citations here now. So I know that she's estate number C-324, that her will is filed in Will Book I, page 411. Her inventory and appraisal is in Inventory Book 1, page 124. That inheritance tax information was filed in Book CI 1, page 168. And that there were other accounts filed in February of 1888. So all of this information in the index book here are the citations for me to check all of the books in the Register of Wills department. Let's look at one more example. This time I want to check the Butler County wills and probate indexes for a man named Archibald Griffin. Griffin, the surname starts with G, so we need the book for the G surnames. In these records, it'll be here in the index for F through H. That's names F, G, and H. And because there's a couple of books here together, F, G, and H, we can see that book F for the F surnames like Franklin starts it, but we won't find Griffin in there. We need to fast forward through this microfilm, flip through these images until we find the start of the book G. Now, I already skipped ahead a little bit and I know that it's quite a bit further. So to save time just for you while you're watching this, I'm going to jump ahead by typing a number in here. So we can see that we've hit the end of book F. And now we're into volume G. So here's the cover of our book for the G surnames in the index at the Register of Wills. We turn the page to open the cover. There's our familiar Russell Key Index chart. And our surname is Griffin. The key letters for Griffin would be R, N. So let's zoom in here. And there's our row for key letter RN. Our person's first name is Archibald, which starts with an A. So going up with the A's and looking at the intersection for key letter RN, that's section 140. So flipping through our virtual book here, we can see that we first come to section 110. And we can simply keep paging along. There's section 130. And finally, section 140, the correct section to find Archibald Griffin if he's in here. And I'm just skimming down the page, looking at our entries. And I don't see him listed on here yet, so I'm going to turn the page. So now, remember our example that I showed in my slides, we're still in section 140, just on page 2. And here's our Archibald Griffin, the second entry on the page. So again, we get a bunch of citations for him. We know we can look at file number G596 to see his estate packet. We can read the administrative bond in Bond Book 21. and look at his inventory and appraisal in Inventory Book 18. So I hope these walkthroughs and explanation of the key index have been helpful and have given you the confidence to go out and search the indexes for your own ancestors.